So in just a few hours, lawyers will head back into the courtroom in Minneapolis for the fifth day of the Derek Chauvin trial. Yesterday, several people took the stand, including George Floyd's girlfriend and paramedics who responded to the scene and Chauvin's former supervisor. Jurors also saw images of first responders struggling to revive Floyd. So for more analysis of this trial, let's bring in CBS News legal contributor and former federal prosecutor Keir Dougall. Keir, so we're moving on to day 5 of the trial. What are your main takeaways so far?
Well, I think the prosecution has had a good couple of days, and they need them because the margin for error in these cases is extremely small, with a high burden of proof in any criminal case. And then in police violence cases, almost always you have this issue of necessity of use of force, which we heard testimony about from Mr. Chauvin's supervisor. So my takeaway is that they've had a good couple of days and they need them.
Over the last few days, the prosecution has shown the jury some very sensitive video. Yesterday, we saw body camera footage from inside the ambulance as paramedics began chest compressions on George Floyd. It is still unclear if former Officer Chauvin will testify during the trial. At this point, do you think he will? Do you think he should?
Well, that's always a difficult choice for a defendant. And when a defendant does choose to testify in their own trial, it really changes the nature of the trial. The focus, of course, turns from all of the evidence that the prosecutors have put on to the defendant, their credibility, and their telling of what occurred. It's hard to say now without having all the evidence come in. I don't think any defendant really does make a choice like this until they've seen all of the prosecutor's evidence. The keys here are that Mr. Chauvin has a right to testify. He's also got a right not to. If he chooses not to, he's entitled to an instruction that the jury cannot hold his silence at trial against him. That's an important civil right that everybody has.
So George Floyd's friend, Maurice Lester Hall, he was with him at the time. He's considered a key witness. He's likely to plead the fifth. Yesterday, Floyd's girlfriend took the stand saying that she and Floyd bought drugs from Hall in the past. Why is he choosing this option, and could it have an effect on the jury?
Yeah, so this is an important little civics lesson about the Fifth Amendment. You can assert the Fifth Amendment whether you're innocent or guilty. You can assert the Fifth Amendment if you believe that your testimony would help prosecutors, even if you think the prosecutors are wrong. Now, if the reports about Mr. Hall are correct, and Mr. Floyd's girlfriend's testimony is, that he was a drug supplier. The reports are that he was wanted on several warrants and gave an incorrect identification at the scene to avoid, presumably, those arrests. That would give him legal exposure and give him a good reason to assert the Fifth Amendment privilege to not confirm all of that or assist prosecutors in Mr. Hall's own prosecution. Now, so he's got based on what I've read, he's got a legal right to assert the Fifth Amendment. That means that he is not available unless something changes. He would not be available to either the defense or the prosecutor as a witness. And the jury should not, I would not expect that the jury would learn about his invocation of the privilege. He would not appear at the trial. I would be surprised if the jury would learn that he had asserted his Fifth Amendment right.
That's interesting. All right, so what will you be watching and listening for today?
So the issue that we keep hearing about from the defense is the causation issue. And I don't think we've seen the full range of testimony on that. I understand there are a number of medical experts coming. I'll also be interested, in addition, of course, to whether Mr. Chauvin decides to testify. I'll be interested to see how the judge charges the jury about what causation is. So typically, in a case like this, the law does not require that a defendant be the 100% and sole cause of the bad outcome. The law only requires something called proximate cause, which is slightly different and looks to things like, are you the substantial cause? Was there an intervening cause? Without your actions, would this not have happened? And that instruction, depending on how it's worded from the judge, could make Mr. Chauvin's defense about the possibility of a medical condition, potentially contributing, drugs, potentially contributing, that may, depending on how that instruction comes in, that may make Mr. Chauvin's defense very difficult to argue.
Keir Dougall, always great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
So day 5 of the Derek Chauvin trial is set to get underway at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. As usual, we will bring it to you live as soon as it begins.